Hey there, welcome to Existential Sunday. My name is Corey, and if we've not met, nice to meet you. I'm a husband, I'm a father, I am a speaker, a writer, and a podcast host. In fact, this that you're watching right now is an extension of that podcast, Existential. And this is just a podcast and a space on Sundays where we talk about justice, faith, and culture, and we do so from a place of deconstructing. So we are the folks that tune in or share and are part of this are people who have either been through some sort of decolonization or deconstruction of their faith or worldview, or they're, as I am, in the process of that being a continuous thing in our lives. So welcome to you if you've never watched before. If you're watching this on the replay, hello to you also. Make sure you comment in the comments on Facebook and on YouTube, so I know that you're here, and I'll come by and say what's up. If you're coming in live, I will do the same. Also, come by later and say what's up to you. Of course, all of you can feel free to share this broadcast. You never have to ask my permission. Even if you watch the replay and you want to share it, you can do so. Or if you want to wait to the very end to make sure this is like something you want to share, you can do that also. But welcome. Happy Labor Day to all of you who are watching this on Labor Day and Labor Day weekend. So maybe you'll watch tomorrow. I don't know. Whenever you watch it, happy Labor Day. It's Labor Day weekend. It's 120,000 degrees here in California. So if you're in California, stay cool, stay indoors. Well, today I'm feeling a lot of feels, and I don't really ever try to hide the fact that I'm feeling all the feels when I'm feeling them. I think it's important. I'm just, let me just tell you what I'm feeling, right? Yesterday, I almost actually went live yesterday because I was like so needing a place to process what I was thinking and feeling. And I decided not to, because had I gone live yesterday, there's no telling what I would have said. Like, I have never dropped an F-bomb on Existential, the podcast, or here on Existential Sunday. But my God, had I gone live yesterday, I think I might have. Because I was feeling this like real back and forth of grief and anger, sorrow and despair, and all of this sort of wound up together. And I'll tell you why I felt that. Yesterday, our sister Linda Sarsour, I saw here on Facebook, shared a video of an armed militia, a bunch of dudes with some women sprinkled in there, but a bunch of dudes with assault rifles and vests on that looked like they were trying to. They either wanted to be or used to be Navy SEALs, because they were, most of them didn't look to be in that great a shape. But they were assembling and they were talking to each other as if they were about to engage some foreign agitators or like some foreign combatants in an actual war. Like they were preparing themselves for a mission. And I watched probably, 5 minutes of this as like they had their chief on a megaphone who was talking about like their security detail. There were these women in the crowd. There were some people in this crowd that had shirts that said something about God. I don't remember exactly what they said about God, but it was something to do with God. They were in Louisville, Kentucky. And as I watched, what they wound up doing was marching to a Black Lives Matter demonstration that was also happening in downtown Louisville. And they were marching on these people with their assault rifles. And I watched this, and there was not a single, at least I didn't see one. I wasn't there, but from what I saw, there wasn't a single person of color in that audience, in that group. This was a group of white folks, armed and angry, chanting "Who streets? Our streets," and then they changed it to "America's streets." So there's this this idea that they were carrying along with their assault rifles that was probably equally as dangerous, that like there is that America belongs to white people. And you see these people in the comments saying at least they're not destroying property. Yeah, they're not destroying property. I watched this yesterday while my oldest daughter was actually away. She was out with friends, and I felt like I wanted her to come home. I, as a black man, was watching this yesterday as a black father, a black husband, and I was carrying a whole lot of grief. In fact, I didn't even tell my wife all that I was feeling as I was watching this. I was afraid. I was mad. And I'm just like, I also felt a little bit of betrayal, which I'll get to in a moment, but I'm sitting there like, why is it? What is so threatening? What is so menacing about the movement for Black lives that white folks feel the need to arm themselves, to insert themselves in a demonstration to disrupt it? And I thought, you know what? And I guess a lot of us have known this for a while, and I've maybe been slow to just accept it, but there's like real sides and war happening in our country. Meanwhile, why I feel a sense of betrayal, my tradition, my faith tradition, by and large, seems to be absent. Like it seems like a good portion of the Christians for whom I spent a lot of my life bringing my family and playing songs and singing is absent. It is going on as if there's nothing happening in the world. Similar to the way my faith tradition responded to the Holocaust. Maybe I've said this before, maybe you've heard it before, but while there were trains of screaming Jews being taken to concentration camps, it has been recorded that Christians just played their worship music louder so they didn't have to hear the screams. And what I think is happening now, again, is that Christians have turned up their church services, their series, their whatever it is, to drown out the noise of something that they maybe I'll err on the side of like grace and say maybe they just don't feel equipped to deal with, or maybe they're afraid of it, whatever the case may be. They have tuned it out and acted as if there was this peaceful middle ground that could be found where like you don't have to deal with it. I'm all for, let me be clear, I'm all for checking out. I check out of it. I check out of the struggle for racial justice in America. I check out of it. I go to the golf course. I go to the beach. I binge watch television shows, which, by the way, Lovecraft Country is an amazing show if you're not watching it already. But I check out of these things because for my own health, but then I check back into them because it's important and necessary. And I'm doing whatever I feel like my part is by getting in front of a camera, in front of a microphone, writing, whenever I have the opportunity, saying, hey, there is a struggle for justice happening in our country that people of goodwill and good character and people who consider themselves to have a moral center can't just walk away from. And God takes a side in this conversation. And there's a story I want to read to you that I thought about earlier this week, and I want to shift to what I want to share with you. That I thought about earlier this week when I was talking to my brother, who is a member of the Cowboys Club in Dallas. And in Dallas, at the Cowboys Club, from what my brother tells me, there's like, this is a very exclusive. You got to know somebody to get in. There's a list, all this kind of stuff. And those of you who don't know, my brother is Black, and he was telling me that he went there to work out because at the bottom level of the Cowboys Club, there's like a fitness center that's open to the public. Well, he got there and he got in the elevator and he was going to press 2 to go up to the Cowboys club, and he was in the elevator with another white man. And when he pressed 2 to go to the Cowboys club, by mistake, because he wasn't actually going there, this white guy said, "Oh, you can't go there. That's for members only." Now, this white guy doesn't know my brother. Doesn't know, isn't his friend, isn't his neighbor. And he himself is actually not a member of the Cowboys club, but assumed that because my brother, I don't know what he assumed. Okay, but I think we can all guess what he assumed, that my brother would not have access. And I thought when my brother told me this about how many people there are who, like, just no matter what's happening in the streets, no matter like how many conversations you have, just don't see what there is to be seen. And I thought about this story. You know, I'm going to read it to you because it's a really applicable story, and I like the story, so I'm going to read it so I don't miss anything, and then I'll stop in between to kind of like point out some things from the story. And those of you that maybe want to read the story later, it's found in the Second Testament of the Bible. It's Luke chapter 16. And at verse 19, it says, "Once there was a rich man who used to dress in the most expensive clothing and spent his days in magnificent luxury. At his gate had been laid a beggar named Lazarus, who was covered with sores. He would have been glad to eat the scraps that fell from the rich man's table, but instead even the dogs would come and lick his sores. In time, the beggar died and was carried away by the angels to Abraham's side. The rich man also died and was buried. In Sheol," if you read this in whatever version of the Bible you read it, those of you who do read the Bible, it says in hell, but it's actually Sheol, which is the place of the afterlife. It's like this abyss, not the hell we think of today. In Sheol, where he was in torment, the rich man looked up and saw Abraham far away with Lazarus at his side. He called out, 'Father Abraham, take pity on me and send Lazarus just to dip the tip of his finger in water to cool my tongue, because I'm in agony in this fire.'" Now, let me say this about this story. If you're a person who comes out of the Christian tradition, you've heard this story before, and most of the emphasis on this story is placed on, again, as I said a few minutes ago, the idea of hell. This is not what this story is about. Like there's some stuff that people get out of this story that's about hell and fire and torment and all this kind of stuff. That is not the moral of this story. It's not the point of why this story was told. So I'm going to put that aside so that you are unaware of that. And if you've come out of a Christian tradition and think this story is about hell, that's not what it is. But it is interesting. And I want to point out the first thing that I find very interesting about this story. And as I'm talking about like people that can't see what there is to be seen, is that in this life, as Jesus is telling the story about these people, there was this guy who had everything, who was rich, who dressed nice, who lived in a gated house, gated community. And outside of that gated community, there was this very poor man who would have been happy to have the smallest, most insignificant portions of what this rich person had. They both die. And as Jesus describes where they wind up in the afterlife, one of them winds up in a good place, which is another great show you should watch, by the way, and the other one winds up in a bad place. We're not actually told why the poor man winds up in a good place when you read this story. But here's the thing that I think the first thing that jumps out at me is that even in the afterlife and even in like being tormented, this person who has lived a life full of privilege and abundance and lived behind a gate to keep him away from people who had sores and people who were poor and people who didn't have what he had, he looks up and sees this person in a better place than he is, but in his mind, he can only see this person as someone who is beneath him. So he says to Abraham, "Could you send that guy to get me some water? Can you have him go fetch something for me?" Like even in this deeply tormented place of an afterlife, and as Jesus is telling this story, this guy cannot see the person who didn't have his luxury as anything other than beneath him. even though he was currently beneath him. He still saw like this guy. It's like it's the way that I feel at times when I go to country clubs. It's like people are trying to figure out, why am I there? How did I get in? Or if I go to a golf course, I watch people looking at me like, how did you get there? My brother, a couple of my brothers do very well. I have two brothers. A couple of them, they do very well for themselves. And my brother, the same one at the Cowboys Club, has talked about how though he is a private wealth management, has his own private wealth management firm, he gets pulled over and they ask him about the car he's driving. They ask him like, what are you doing in this? This is the mentality that like this rich man had towards the poor man. He's like, I don't know how you got where you are, like in this good place and I'm in this bad place, but could you go, can you send him to get me some water? Like he still can't see in front of him that this human being is not beneath him, that this human being is equal to him. He cannot see it even in the afterlife, right? And so then his story goes on, and after he asked Abraham to tell the dude to get him some water, Abraham said, son, remember that when you were alive, you got the good things while he got the bad, but now he gets his consolation here while you are the one in agony. Yet that isn't all. Between you and us, a deep rift has been established so that those who would like to pass from here to you cannot, blah, blah, blah. Here's the part I want to read. The rich man says this. He says, Father, I beg you to send him to my father's house, where I have 5 brothers, to warn them, so that they may be spared having to come to this place of torment too. But Abraham said, they have Moses and the prophets. They should listen to them. However, the rich man said, no, Father Abraham, they need more. If someone from the dead goes to them, they'll repent. But Abraham replied, if they won't listen to Moses and the prophets, they won't be convinced even if someone rises from the dead. If they won't listen to Moses, they won't listen to anybody, even if they rise from the dead. I have told you guys this before, and this was a harsh reality that I guess I was confronted with yesterday. It does not matter how many articles you send about critical race theory and Marxism and BLM and it not being antithetical to the gospel of Jesus. It doesn't matter how many articles you send. It doesn't matter how many of these Existential Sundays I do, how many podcasts I do. For some people, they are not going to listen. And for those people, I feel in this moment like it is, I've said to you before, it is a waste of time and effort and energy. And Abraham, in essence, in this story, again, this is a story that Jesus is telling to make a point about justice. Abraham's basically saying, I'm not going to send anyone. It is a waste of time to send anyone from here to there because they have everything they need to understand what justice looks like. They are just refusing to see it. And for so many people in the Christian tradition, especially my white brothers and sisters from the Christian tradition, you have everything you need to see what's right in front of you to see. You just refuse to look at it. You just refuse to accept it. It is not that it needs to be worded in a different way, said in a different way. I can remember being around some of my brothers and sisters who are white, and when we would start to talk about, okay, we need to engage in conversation about racial justice because our country is teetering. It's been teetering on this in this racial conflict for the last, I don't know, well, ever since we've been here, but certainly things have escalated since 2016. And I remember being at a church going, we need to start talking about this, and remember how like we had to maneuver so that we could craft it in just the right way so that people would understand it. And now I'm looking like, oh, that was not about crafting. That was us being ignorant to the reality that there are some people that no matter how you craft it, They just don't want to hear it. And I felt betrayed yesterday by all of my brothers and sisters, some of which were even my Black brothers and sisters that are a part of the Christian tradition that I come from and still consider myself to be a part of, who feel like we can opt out of these discussions, who feel like there's this middle ground to be found where Black folks can be just as racist as white people can be racist, and what we need is Jesus and blah, 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 blah. I felt betrayed yesterday when I saw people carrying assault rifles. And I thought, where is this middle ground that you guys are all trying to find? What is this place? And then I thought, if like armed militia don't convince you that we need to be talking about addressing, moving, acting, voting, making sure that people get out to vote, making sure that that we do all that we can, take people to the polls with us. If armed militia doesn't convince you, nothing will. And I guess, folks, today I'm feeling, as I told you, I'm gonna let you know what I feel. Today I'm feeling a little bit of probably some despair. I honestly don't sit here today going, yeah, I got answers for you, because I feel like I don't. I share this story with you today to go, yeah, there's people that you should avoid engaging in this way because they're not listening to you. If Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and Ella Baker and all of these folks who have gone before us can't convince them, you won't either. I feel like this story of the rich man and Lazarus is so much of what America has become or has been, is in so many ways, that there are people, Black and brown folks, people from the LGBTQ plus community, who are forced to hope for the scraps that white America would give us. And even when we try to get scraps, let me be very clear. Justice for Breonna Taylor is not asking for something beyond the realm of what every American should reasonably expect to receive. Yet it feels like such a huge ask. When we ask for justice for Trayvon Martin, it seemed like such a huge ask. We're literally asking for the scraps of democracy. And even in asking for that, we're labeled thugs, provocateurs, divisive, asking for the scraps that fall off of the table of white Americans. And this is what feels disheartening to me. And it feels disheartening to me that again, that I have Christian brothers and sisters who it's just staring you in the face and you can't see it. And I go, are you is it like Lazarus? Is it going to take, and I do believe this, I've said this before, I think it's going to take the age to come. And I think in the age to come, this is why Jesus tells so many stories about people being surprised in whatever the afterlife looks like, which I'm not going to sit and act like I can tell you what it is, because I don't know. I don't think anyone could really say, if they're being intellectually honest, if they know exactly what the afterlife is. But what we can say is, as Jesus describes a picture of the afterlife, there are people who are surprised about what's going on there. And I think that many of us, provided there is this good place, bad place thing that happens once we die, will be surprised when we get there to see that it's not what we thought it was, and that people weren't who we thought they were, especially Americans who have criminalized the poor, who have made homelessness a crime. Do you know that there are states in America where sleeping outside in certain parts of a city is illegal? People who don't have a place to lay their heads, people who don't have a place to shelter, have nowhere else to go. There are certain zones that say it's illegal for you to sleep outside. We know you don't have a home, and we're not going to really do shit to make sure you do have a home. But if you sleep outside, we're going to take you to jail. And we have this like tendency in America to look at people as bad people because of the choices that they make, not realizing that the choices that they make are being made because we have this gate in America that is between the haves and the have-nots. And the people, the have-nots outside of our gates have nothing but bad choices in front of them to make. And guess what? You would make the same bad choices if you were in their shoes. You just happen to have the privilege to not have to make those bad choices. I was with a friend once who was talking about a Tesla and talking about like how Teslas pay themselves off in 5 years. So it's a wise investment to make. And I thought, and I don't say this to demonize people who have the means. Let me be clear. I'm not trying to demonize people for being rich or having the means to wealth or whatever that you've acquired. And I thought, it's interesting. That's a really wise decision that there are lots of people in this country that would never get a chance to make. That like people who live in certain parts, in certain urban areas where Black and brown communities don't get to make that kind of choice. They have to make the choice. Am I going to starve or move weight? Am I going to, like, I was with a guy earlier this week who was former baseball player. And I asked him, I said, he was sort of describing how he grew up. And I asked him, I said, well, what would happen if you didn't have baseball? He said, I would have been in jail or died. I would be in jail or dead if it weren't for baseball. Baseball became this like escape. And for so many athletes, we hear that same story happening all the time because they're living outside of the gate of the haves, and the people who have it, rather than saying, how can we help, are saying, these people are criminals, arrest them. We have criminalized poverty. We have criminalized Black and brown skin. And now we have armed militias all over America descending on Black Lives Matter demonstrations. The movement for Black Lives has now seen, I've now seen with my own eyes. I talked about last week about Kyle Rittenhouse, and I see with my own eyes yesterday, another armed militia. This isn't going to just stop. People aren't just going to be like, oh, we're not, oh, you know what? We're not, because they only see the world the way that they see it. What I guess now I have arrived at a place that I'm talking. Here's what I'm asking each and every one of you who's watching this to do, especially those of you who consider yourselves followers of Jesus, people of like this moral conscious, this moral center. I am asking you to stop treating conversations about race, issues of race, where there's conversations or actions about race, as if there's like this middle ground, as if it's no big deal, because it's no big deal to you because it doesn't affect you. People are dying over this shit, which has me concerned for my own family, my own future. So I'm asking you, if you're a person who's like, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to say, educate yourself and then start saying some stuff. And we can start, some of us can start today with some actions and some demonstrations and some whatever else have you. I've talked before about a lot of people who are leading the way when it comes to organizing and activism. But most of us can start November 3rd or before November 3rd by registering to vote. I saw yesterday, Trevor Noah was talking about, you guys can Google this because I don't have the website in front of me. Trevor Noah was talking about how because of the coronavirus, most of the poll workers tend to be elderly people. And those elderly people are some of the most vulnerable in our society. So understandably so, are more reluctant to go work the polls and be around all these people coming into these polling places. And so there's a shortage of poll workers, which means the lines will be longer, which means that less people will show up to vote, which means that we could wind up having not enough people during one of the most important elections of our lifetime, not enough people able to cast their vote. And we could wind up in a worse place than we are now, which, to be honest with you, sometimes I wonder if it doesn't even really matter. God, I hate that I said that out loud, but sometimes I do. But we do still have to continue to resist. And that is one of the ways that you can resist. So if you are as young as 16, you can actually register, go online, you can register to be a poll worker, and it's a paying gig. So Any of you who have that capacity to do so, or desire to do so, that is a way that you can help. Because I do believe that one of the ways that the current occupant of the White House can remain a tyrant and can remain, by the way, this militia, I don't need to tell you what kind of flags they were flying. Besides the American flag, there was a flag, a blue flag with TRUMP, 5 letters on it. This emboldening of white supremacy. We have to address it. And for many of us, November 3rd is the first step of addressing it, the first step of a long journey towards addressing what has happened here in America. A long journey of making sure that other Black fathers and Black mothers and Black people in general don't have to watch something in horror and feel like, oh shit, I don't even have the support of the White House when people start bringing out assault rifles against me and my family, where these things begin to feel state sanctioned. So guys, thanks for watching this. If you watched for 31 minutes and some change, I imagine you found it compelling enough to share. So please feel free to do so. Man, I really, sorry if I got like twisted up in there. I just told you guys I was feeling really heavy, feeling a lot of stuff. I'm feeling all the feels today. But I'm grateful for all of you who watched. If you are not a part of the Patreon community and you'd like to support the work that I'm doing here, the link to that is actually not in the comments this week. It's actually in the title of the broadcast. So you can go up, see the title, click on that link and sign up to be a part of that community. I appreciate all of you who already are a part of that community. Thank you to all of you who shared this and commented. I appreciate you so much. Grace and peace until next time.